Welcome to third grade. I am your teacher, Mr. Ritenour. Click the YouTube button below to make this video bigger. Let's start with some common sense today. If you use the last of the toilet paper, always replace the roll. Raise your hand if you've been there. Have you been that guy? Yeah, I think everyone has. Not a good feeling, right? Don't put someone else in that situation because you're too lazy to replace the roll. Okay, always. And if there's just a little bit left, you should still replace the roll. Like if there's not enough for a wipe, if you know what I'm saying, you should replace it, okay? Leaving a little tiny strip of paper does not mean that you are, that you're doing the right thing. Okay, folks, that's your words of wisdom. Let's move on to some decimals. No need to get any scrap paper unless you want to. I just need your minds. I need your eyes and your minds. So today we're going to talk about comparing our decimals. Review. A decimal is a fraction with base 10 as our denominator. So all week we've been talking about fractions that have a base 10, as in tenths. So 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, all the way up to 9/10. Right? So 9/10 or 0.9, as you can see right here in our problem, is going to be compared to 1 whole. So let me rewrite 1 in decimal form. Okay? Let me rewrite 1 in decimal form. I'm going to write it here in yellow. 1 in decimal form is really 1.0. 1.0. Now, it's a matter of comparing place values, just like if I was comparing any other number. So let's look at my biggest place value. In these two numbers, they both have tenths. See that? And they both have a digit in the ones. Ones. Now, look at my decimal, 0.9. What's my value of my ones place? It's 0. What's the value of my 1.0 ones place? 1. Which is bigger, 0 or 1? Yeah, 1 is bigger, right? So 1 will be greater than 0. This 0.9 right here, even though you think, oh, 9 is bigger than 0, right? Yeah, 0.9 is bigger than 0.0, but that's not your biggest place value because this 1 is bigger than 0.9. All right, this 1 is bigger than 0. So a lot of kids get confused because they see the 9 and they think, oh, 9 is bigger than 1. 9 must be larger. Nope, it's all about the place value, baby. That'd be like you saying this, okay? You ready? That'd be like you saying that 1,000 is less than 9. Look at all the digits. 1, 0, 0, 0. Well, 9 is bigger than all those digits, right? But Mr. R, 9 is not bigger than 1,000 because place value. It all comes back to place value. All right. Let's take a visual of this problem. 1.0 is greater than 0.9. Let's look at it in terms of our fraction strips. So on the left, I've got 1 whole. That's 1. On the right, I've got 0.9. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tenths. And let's stack them on top of each other. All right? Or right side by side. Which is bigger? Yes, 1.0 is bigger than 0.9. My next question to you is how can I make these equal? What do I need to do to make it equal? Okay. Well, if you're thinking, I need to add something to this side, you're right. What do you need to add to 0.9 to make it equal to 1 whole? Think about it. Up here, that's 9/10. That's what this 0.9 means. It means 0 and 9/10. What do you have to add to 9/10 to make it 1 whole, or 10/10? How do I make this 10 on top? What do I have to add? I've got to add 1/10, right? So look down here. 0.9 plus 0 or 0 and, that's what 0 point means, 0 and 1/10. If I add 0.9 and 0.1 to my model, let me clone one of these. If I add it, oh, would you look at that? Would you look at that? Now I'm equal. Now I'm equal. So let me change here. 0.9, I'm going to erase it, plus 0.1 equals 1.0. So now I've got two equal fractions or decimals. All right, so let me clear. And let's do another problem. Let's see, which is bigger? 1.2 or 0.7. Which do you think is bigger? Well, my imaginary student named Johnny said, oh, Mr. Ritenour, 7 is bigger than a 1 or a 2, right? This 7 is bigger than this 1 or this 2, right? Well, Johnny, let's see if you're right. I think you might have forgotten about place value. Well, I would agree, Johnny. 0.7 in the tenths place is equal to 7/10. 0.2 in the tenths place is only equal to 2/10. So Johnny, if I was comparing my decimal, I would agree. You're 100% right. 7/10 is bigger. But guess what, Johnny? You forgot something. You forgot that when we compare, we always look at the greatest place value. We always look at the greatest place value, which in this case is our 1s. Remember, boys and girls, the further you go to the left, the bigger the place value. The furthest number to the left is 1 and 0. So now we have to compare. Which is bigger, Johnny? 1 or 0? You're right. 1 is bigger than 0, which means 1.2 is greater than 0.7. Now I'm going to show a picture of 1.2. All right, here's 1 whole, and I'm going to steal 0.2. So this is 1.2. I'm going to add it right onto the end. That's 1.2. Now I need to make 0.7. So let's count each of my tenths. Okay, I've got 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, and 7/10. So I have one extra. I need to delete that. All right, so now you can see I've got 7/10. Let's stack up my 7/10. You have to start right at the same spot. Okay, which is bigger at my picture, looking at my picture? All right, my 1.2 or my 0.7, which is bigger? You're right, the 1.2 is longer. All right, great job. Let's do one more of these, and then we'll move on to some US history. All right, so let's do another one. How about let's compare two numbers that have that both have a 1 in the ones place. So let's compare 1.2 again, and we're going to compare 1.2 with 1.4. Okay, 1.2 compared to 1.4. This time I'm going to use my imaginary student, Sally. Sally says, Mr. Ritenour, I have been paying attention, and the last few times this number, the decimal, the smaller one was the one that was greater than. So I'm going to say that 1.2 is greater than 1.4. Okay, Sally, let's see if you're right. If I'm comparing and I'm looking at my tenths, Sally, I am not comparing the right digits. You always compare the greatest place value, which is found the furthest number to the left. So, Sally, I need to circle my furthest number to the left. Both of them happen to be in my ones place. Ones, ones. And guess what, Sally? They're both 1. What do I do now if they're both the same? What do you think, boys and girls? Yes, you're absolutely right. Mr. Ritenour, you need to look at the place value next to it if they're both equal. Remember, you always, always start at the furthest left, and if they're the same, you go back as many place values as you can until you find a difference. If there's no difference, they're equal. All right, but in this case, my 2 and my 4 are different. My 2 is worth a value of 2/10 because this is my tenths place. Tenths. This 4 is worth 4/10 because it's also in my tenths place. So which is bigger? 2/10, Sally, or 4/10? Yes, you were wrong, Sally. 4/10 is bigger, which makes 1.4 is greater than 1.2. Another way of saying that would be 1.2 is less than 1.4. Now, let's draw a picture, all right? So I'm going to move all my stuff over a little bit, and I'm going to draw a picture of 1.2, which is already done for me. This is 1.2. See how I've got one hole, and then I've got 1/10, which is 0.1. 0.2 right there, okay? Now I need to make 1.4. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a copy. I'm going to clone my 1. All right, so they're the same distance, 1. And now I need 0.4. So I need 4/10, right? That's what 0.4 is. So here's 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, and 4/10. So 0.4 is right there. I'm going to take these 3 extra ones and delete them. So now I've got 0.4. Okay, so I'm going to move my 0.4 up so it's connected to my 1 hole. Oh yes, just like so. Okay, it's as close as I can get it. Now, I'm better label this so I don't forget. This is 1.4, this whole thing. So, which is longer? Obviously, this guy comes out further than this guy. All right, so 1.4 is my greater fraction. Okay, well done. There's just one more thing I want to do before I move on to US history. I lied, okay? What if I have a fraction, or what if I have a comparison that looks like this? What if I have 2.0 compared to 1 point, oh, sorry, undo, 11.9. Well, my imaginary student Bart's like, right here, 2 is bigger than 1. 2 is bigger than 1, right? Look, both ones. 2 is bigger. Well, Bart, sadly, you forgot my rule. Always look at the greatest place value. Look, Bart, 2 is worth 2 in the ones. Check out this greatest place value. That 1 is in what place? That 1 is in the tens. So what is 1 in the tens worth? It's worth 10. So now I'm comparing 2 to 10, which is bigger, right? The 10, so 11.9 is bigger. Okay, I just wanted to show you one example of place value going further than the ones. All right, now it's time for some US history. So yesterday we talked a lot about the start of the war and we talked about the Holocaust. The Holocaust was the extermination of all the Jews. Hitler wanted to get rid of Jews because he hated them. He thought they were unworthy. It doesn't matter what kind of a person you were. If you were Jewish, you would be in danger of Hitler killing you. Now, before Hitler killed a lot of the Jews, he used them as slaves in prisons called concentration camps, where they would build weapons and make clothing and all kinds of stuff, and he'd work them literally to death. World War II is such a devastating war, not just because of the fighting, but because of things like the Holocaust. Okay? Now, in order to get more of an idea of World War II, it's important to understand who Hitler was. Because on one side, on the good guys' side, you have the Americans and the British, which would be FDR, the American president at the time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And on the other side, or with Europe, you have Winston Churchill. Okay, so you've got two really powerful, strong leaders on the good guy side. But then on the bad guy side, you've got really standing alone, you've got Adolf Hitler. Hitler was a very complicated person. So we're going to watch a little clip here about Adolf Hitler before we continue with today's lesson. Okay? So sit back and watch. Okay, so I showed you that video because it really captures how evil of a person Hitler was. And you really can't understand World War II as well without understanding how evil Hitler was. Okay, so They talked a little bit about the Holocaust and the killing of the Jews in that video. Let's continue right where we left off with that. So if you look down at the bottom of my screen, I have highlighted up to what we read yesterday. If you'd like, read out loud with me as I continue, okay? You ready? While the Nazis were murdering Jews, they were also fighting a war on both sides of their country. They nearly defeated the Russians to the east while sweeping through France to the west. Let's look at arrow 1 really quick, okay? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to bring it forward here. Bring to the front, that way you can see it. All right, take a look at all the red is all the territory that the Germans took over right away. So you see this symbol right here? That's called a swastika, and that was the symbol of the Germans. So if you ever see that symbol, it means not good things. There are still people nowadays that draw swastikas and carry flags with swastikas. Those people are called white supremacists. It means that they think white people should control the world just like Hitler. Okay, so this is an evil symbol. You never want to draw it, or it's not something to joke about. It's very serious. So let's look at some of the countries. Okay, looking at our map here of Europe, it's pretty easy to see that the Germans, they pretty much took over everything. So this right here is modern day Germany right here, okay? Deutschland, as they call it. And Germany took over, let's see if I can draw here. Germany went straight into France. Okay, they went right through Belgium and into France. This is France, by the way. Tu parles français? So Germany went straight into France to the west, and they went straight into Russia, which is also called the Soviet Union, it was back then, to the east. Okay, all of this border was Soviet Union. Okay, all of it. Germany's fighting a war on two sides. They're fighting to the west, they're moving through France, and Hitler to the east is moving through the Soviet Union. So can you imagine fighting a war on two different sides? That'd be hard to do, right? But Hitler went through with it. Now, if you look down here, you can see, why is this part not captured? What's up with that? Well, I'll tell you. This is Spain and Portugal, and they pretty much stayed out of the war. What about over here? Well, thank goodness. This is Ireland, and they kind of stayed out of it, so don't really worry about them. But right here, this is Britain. This island is known as Great Britain, and that includes Scotland, England, and Wales. So the British were the only ones that were able to stand up to the Nazis. They're the only ones that the Nazis didn't take over pretty much in Europe. All right, so Britain was the last hope of a Nazi-free Europe. Now look down here. This is Italy. Italy was on the bad guy side. They had an evil leader as well named Benito Mussolini. So Italy's a bad guy, and Spain is neutral, but they're kind of like bad guys too. They didn't really help. But so really the only good guys you have is Britain. The last one's left to defend. British did a really good job of defending their country against the Nazis because of their air force. All right, so I'm going to put our map back for now, but at least you can see how much the Germans took over really quickly. The Nazis took over almost all of Europe in a matter of, just a few seconds, really. Okay, so it erased the stuff underneath. I'm just gonna quickly highlight it so we know where we're at already. Okay, we're right over here with the Nazis controlled. You ready? Let's keep reading. The Nazis controlled nearly all of Europe by 1941, and they convinced their ally, that means their teammate, Japan, to do the unthinkable. Attack America. Yes, I know. Attack America isn't on American soil. On December 7th, 1941, that's a day that will live in infamy. That's what FDR said. The Japanese kamikazes. Now, a kamikaze is a suicide bomber plane. It's a plane that doesn't have enough fuel to make it back. So the pilot literally uses his own plane as a bomb, and he just runs into whatever he can find to kill. All right? Suicide, right? The pilot knows he's going to die, and he does it anyway. So the Japanese kamikazes came over, and they bombed Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor is an Air Force base, or I can't remember. It's a naval base, actually, off the coast or on the coast of Hawaii. Okay, so the Japanese snuck up as close as they could to get to Hawaii without the Americans knowing it, and sent their kamikazes over to destroy Pearl Harbor. Now, at the time, it was the largest. 2,403 Americans died, making it the largest or the greatest loss in U.S. soil in modern history. Of course, that number goes up on September 11th, 2001, during the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers. But up until 2001, this would have been the largest loss on U.S. soil. Just devastating. So what happens? Well, immediately the next day, the USA declares war on Japan and on Germany. Declaring war means that we're going to go fight. Germany and Japan. Oh, wait, I'm not going to read that. I'll leave that for another day. So let's just stop right there, okay? And I want to show you another short video to end on the United States entering World War II.
There are many among us who in the past closed their eyes to events abroad because they believed that what was taking place in Europe was none of our business, that we could maintain our physical safety by retiring within our continental boundaries. To those who would not admit the possibility of the approaching storm, the past weeks have meant the shattering of many illusions.
With a third of Europe now under Nazi control, America still sits on the sidelines. Many believe the war to be Europe's problem. Recalling the horrors of World War I, the majority of Americans don't want to get involved in another European war. President Franklin Roosevelt attempts to convince them otherwise. On September 16, 1940, Roosevelt signs the Selective Training and Service Act, the first peacetime draft in American history. All able-bodied men between 21 and 30 must register for military service. Though Congress approves the bill, it is careful to call it a national defense measure. The draftees may only be sent to defend American-held territories. 2 years ago, the United States had the 17th largest army in the world, smaller than tiny Romania's. And almost 2/3 of American recruits have never fired a rifle. By the summer of 1941, Hitler is ready to launch his forces further east. In June, his armies invade the Soviet Union. By September, they have captured over 1.4 million Soviet troops. In November, Germany, Japan, and Italy renew their military alliance. All agreed to safeguard their common interests. The Axis powers are ready to carve up the world.
Important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The facts of yesterday and today speak for themselves. The people of the United States have already formed their opinions and well understand the implications to the very life and safety of our nation.
4 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Germany and Italy declare war on the United States. It is the first and only time Hitler actually declares war on another nation. Across the U.S., panic spreads as Americans realize they have enemies off both coasts. Surging above the fear is a wave of patriotism and outrage. Within 30 days of the attack, over 134,000 young men enlist for service, ready to take the fight to the enemy. The wars in Europe and Asia now merge into a single gigantic world war, the largest war in history.
Okay, so we're right at the climax here. Okay, I want to keep going, but I know you have other things that you need to do today. So we're gonna leave the rest of it for tomorrow. But I do want to say, that watching that video reminded me that the United States was trying to stay out of World War II at the beginning. We were watching what was happening from a distance, and we were pretty content as a country. Now I'm speaking in general. There's a lot of people on both sides, but in general, we were pretty okay with isolationism, which means just worrying about ourselves and letting them do whatever. It wasn't until December 7th, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, that we changed our minds as a country. If it wasn't for the Japanese attacking Pearl Harbor, the United States might never have been involved in World War II. There's a lot of debate among historians about that. And that is really fascinating. You could almost argue, and I've heard this argument, that if it wasn't for the Japanese, Hitler might have been successful in Europe. Who knows? That's all speculation because that's not what happened. What did happen was the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and the United States jumped into World War II and started fighting. And really, if it wasn't for us, and by us I mean the US, we would live in a totally different world. We would live in a Nazi-infested world. The United States entering World War II turned the war, just like World War I, it turned the war into the Allies' favor. All right, us entering the war made all the difference in the world, literally. So, okay, tomorrow you'll find out what happens next. I know you're excited. I'm pretty pumped. Spoilers: the good guys win. Okay. Yeah, you know that, right? You already knew that we won World War II. But let's get to the details about it tomorrow. For now, I just want to say that I hope I see you tonight. It is our weekly powwow at 7 o'clock on Google Meet. I hope to see you there. Not that I haven't loved seeing all the girls. I love you girls. But it's been pretty much all the girls recently, and I'd like to see some of my young men join us tonight. I miss your faces. So if I see you there, that's great. If not, no big deal. But I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'm officially done.